Marcus Smart is suspended for the final preseason game. What does that mean for Ime Udoka's plan? Plus, a couple of your mailbag questions right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
I'm so hyped right now. Anything's possible. Oh, my mama. Oh, my lady, ma. Anything's possible.
Rainy J's back with the vengeance. All the real Celtics fans in attendance. This the truth like 34. This like walking in the garden when you hear the roars. The crowd goes crazy. Most in-depth coverage on the daily. Mainly podcast royalty, the content kings. When you talking about the franchise with 17 rings. Focus like Danny at the deadline. Global, but it got a local feel like the red line, the blue line, the green line. Play it in between time. I'ma throw my C's jersey on in the meantime and press play. When the F's done, I can't wait until the next day. Trying to stay in tune with the C's, that's the best way. Melly.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making this show part of your daily routine and your first listen every day. Locked On Celtics is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. I'm John Karalis. I cover the team for Boston Sports Journal, and I've written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, which you can pick up anywhere books are sold. Get a signed copy for $30 on my website, johnkaralis.com. Today, it's all about Marcus Smart in the first two segments. Marcus gets suspended for the Friday preseason finale in Miami. I'll tell you the nuts and bolts, what Ime Udoka said, what Marcus Smart said. Then in the second segment, what that means for this preseason game, which was supposed to be a dress rehearsal. And later on, some of the mailbag questions, including Josh Richardson, Enes Kanter, and just to empty out some of that, people are sending me mailbag questions through my website, johnkaralis.com/mailbag. If you go to johnkaralis.com, it's all right there at the top. Just send me a question, and when I get a chance to get to it, I will pop it in when it's relevant. So please do that. So let's start with Marcus Smart here. Marcus got suspended for a game, one game, preseason game, right? Not a big deal. This is, I think, a great opportunity for Ime Udoka to dish out a little bit of discipline for Marcus Smart, sitting him down for essentially what became a meaningless game. And I'll talk more about this in the second segment, but no Jaylen Brown, no Al Horford already. So the plan is already out the window. So Marcus Smart missing this game one way or another, not the biggest deal in the world, not great, but Ime gets to lay down the law. Smart wouldn't say what it was when there was a media availability earlier on Thursday. Ime was asked directly what it was, and he said, we're going to keep it in-house. Marcus Smart was asked about it. He said, we're going to keep it in-house. But Adrian Wojnarowski from ESPN tweeted out, Marcus Smart missed the team plane. Okay, fine. Smart misses the team plane. Udoka says, I had a rule set up in place. It was my rule. Apparently, if you miss the team plane, you miss a game. So fair enough, Marcus gets dinged for a game. Here's Udoka's quote. Marcus broke a team rule. We talked about it. We handled it internally, but he won't play tomorrow. He's with us on the trip. Marcus is one of our leaders, and we expect a certain standard of him, and he knows that. He's remorseful. He will not play tomorrow, and we'll get him ready for opening night. He continued on and said, we set the standard pretty high from day one, and he understands that as well as the rest of the team. He understands what we expect from him. For Marcus's point of view, he said, we're going to keep it in-house. It's over and done with. We're excited for the game at MSG. Boom. He says it's frustrating that he won't be able to play in Miami, but it is what it is. We'll handle that in-house. It's over and done with. On the surface, let's just keep it macro or micro level, I should say. At the micro level, not the biggest deal in the world, right? Guys will miss a team plane from time to time. That's going to happen in the NBA. He probably isn't going to be the only guy who misses a team plane in this season. So on the surface, I'm not really worked up about Marcus Smart missing the team plane. You go a little bit broader, and I start to wonder. Marcus, I've mentioned Marcus on the podcast before, saying, I don't know. So I feel like something's kind of up with him this season. Like, he doesn't seem like his normal self, which is a bit happier in general. He doesn't seem quite as happy as he's been in the past. And so I've already had in the back of my head just this thought of, well, I just kind of wonder what's up with Marcus. And then this happens. And I just wonder if there's more to this than, oh, he just missed the team plane. I can't say that there is. That's just me guessing. And I don't want to go into reckless speculation because that's not fair to Marcus Smart. I just have this feeling, kind of like what I've said before, but if you missed it, you know when you have a loved one and the person is walking around and you just say, something's a little off about you. Are you okay? Like, we've all done that with somebody that we love. You just see that person, you just, it doesn't feel like you're your normal self. I can't quite put my finger on it. And that person might say, "Oh yeah, I'm okay, I'm fine," and they're fine, and Marcus might be fine. But I had that feeling, and then this happens, and it's just a little two things now. I'm just wondering. Again, I'm not saying that anything is actually wrong. I have no information that says that anything is wrong, and Smart's been, pretty open, his usual open self with the media, it seems like, but it just I'm just keeping my eye on this Marcus situation. We know that Smart has from time to time, kind of every year, had his moments where something is off, wrong. Like famously a few years ago with LA in that picture frame incident. He tends to have those moments every year, and we've kind of said this is how it goes with Marcus. You have that kind of burst of something's up, and then it results in a suspension or team discipline, and then it goes away, and then Marcus is his usual self, and for 95% of the year, he's great. He's exactly the type of player I would want on my team. Then that 5% of the time, it's just like, all right, well, you gotta deal with some of those things. This might be that. It might not be that, but the speculation, just you can't help but just wonder if this is that. The timing of it is not particularly great. This is the beginning of the season. Is he going to be named the captain? Maybe he's not going to be named the captain. Maybe he is. I don't know what Ime Udoka is thinking with the captains and all of that. I would hope that maybe coming out of the game or going into the season, that will be information that comes out. And as that leader, regardless of whether he's named captain or not, as that leader, being the guy that gets dinged right away for a game, is that a great thing? No. But the way he handles it is going to have to be a display of leadership. An admission, standing up in front of the team, be like, you know what, guys, my bad. I screwed up. I'm going to own it. I face the music here in front of the media. And then done. Go into the regular season. If he's fine after this, then he's fine. I understand and will admit that this isn't just like a random Jason Tatum missed the team plane. And you say, well, Tatum never gets into any trouble. And so Tatum misses a team plane. No one bats an eye. But because it's Marcus, there's that layer of skepticism. So I really honestly, I can't say which way it's going to go. I think it's going to be fine. It probably should be fine. It should not be a big deal. This should just be something that's over and done with, and we all move on. But that said, I have just a tiny bit more skepticism than I would normally have, just because of the vibe I've gotten from Marcus at the beginning of training camp. So let's dive into the game when I come back, and what does this mean for this game against Miami? And I'm going to talk to you about that after I talk to you about Prize Picks. The Prize Picks is the best NBA daily fantasy prop game on the market. Prize Picks offers more NBA props than any other daily fantasy sports prop operator and offers all the superstar players as well as bench players that are only recording a handful of minutes in each game. Prize Picks offers any prop you can think of. Think about it in terms of football, like from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown. Those types of props on the NBA side. All of your users that deposit right here, all of our users that deposit and use the promo code NBA will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. So if you deposit $100, boom, you get anything up to $100 matched with the promo code NBA. And it works like this. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times an entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. Very simple. Prize Picks allows mixed sport entries, so you can take the over on LeBron combined with the under on Mahomes in the same entry. So you can use the award-winning app on both the App Store and on Google Play. Entries can be made 60 seconds or less, so it's super easy. All it takes less than a minute. Prize Picks is safe and it offers fast withdrawals. Do not hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com. Use the promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Thank you for making the Locked On Celtics podcast your first listen every day. Really do appreciate that. Going to get into more of your questions coming up in the third segment. First, I want to see if you want to make your second listen. How about Locked On Red Sox? The Red Sox begin their AL Championship Series on Friday. Why not check out the Locked On Red Sox podcast? Of course, you got Locked On Patriots and Locked On Bruins. Whatever you are a fan of, there's a Locked On podcast for you there. So let's get into more of this Marcus Smart suspension, the impact on the team on the court, which I kind of said earlier, it's not really that important. I think the Celtics had the luxury of suspending him for a game because it's the preseason. So very easy to say you're out for a game. I think the Celtics might have just done that anyway. I'm not going to sit here and say that Ime Udoka is going to be soft and change his discipline based on what the situation is. But regardless, super easy to suspend a guy for a preseason game. Again, no Jalen, no Al Horford, no Peyton Pritchard. He's got a broken nose. He's done for the preseason. By the way, they are optimistic that he is going to come back for opening night, but we'll see. That we'll hopefully get an update, maybe even by the time you listen. So with those guys out, it's basically Jason Tatum and the rest of the crew, and you're going to get Schroeder back, you're going to get Josh Richardson back, and you kind of get to run with Tatum and the second units and just kind of see. Might as well. The number one impact is you're just going with Jason Tatum as your main guy, and you're experimenting with Tatum and the second unit guys and how to maybe run a lineup out there without Tatum or Brown. Maybe you want to rest both of those guys at the same time. Where the suspension really hurts is Marcus Smart would be part of these lineups. Like Marcus Smart, maybe not part of the second unit lineups, but if you wanted to run Jalen and Jason on the bench scenarios, Smart would certainly be on the floor for some of that. And with the Celtics defensive switching in a very heavy communication scheme, it really hurts to not have your number one defensive guy, your main communicator, the quarterback of your defense in a lot of ways, because Marcus Smart does know so much about what the other team is trying to do. It is hard. It does set them back a little bit. So I don't want to minimize the importance of the Smart suspension. And I don't want to make it seem like, oh, this doesn't hurt the team. It does, because it's one guy that they had planned. Okay, Jalen is out. He'll be back before the regular season starts. That's the assumption. Horford is out. He may not be back before the regular season starts, but he's not going to miss that much more time, it doesn't seem. So you go into this as Ime Udoka, and you think, all right, we can run scenarios where it's Smart plus Tatum plus bench guys, or Smart and let's see how Smart and Schroeder play together. Let's get that experimentation out there for a big stretch of this game. If we're not going to have Jalen and Al, let's figure out Marcus Smart kind of experimentation a little bit here. Now you don't even have that. So with 3 of your 5 starters out, this was supposed to be a dress rehearsal at the beginning of preseason, before we even got into one preseason game. Udoka said, we're going to, don't read too much into the first game, the first 2 games, even the first 3 games. That 4th game is where we're going to get what you see in the 4th game is probably what we're going to be putting out there. And so right away, that gets blown up. That gets blown up with the 2 COVID cases and now Marcus Smart. To lose those guys and to throw the Marcus Smart thing on top of it, okay, fine. it doesn't really hurt the team that much more in terms of they were already out two of their starters, so they weren't gonna have a lot of what they wanted to try with their game plan. That wasn't gonna happen. But Smart is such an important part of what they're doing. The inability to throw him in there with different combinations, it really turns this into basically the second preseason game where they're going to ramp up Jason Tatum. This is an opportunity to get Jason Tatum 30 plus minutes and Robert Williams, stretch him out a little bit. He's going to have to play more minutes because his side note, he admitted that his conditioning is not where he needs it to be. That's something that, remember, if you listened to yesterday's show, I questioned whether his conditioning was right, and I asked him about that directly, and he's like, "Yeah, my conditioning could be better, to be honest." So you're going to see more Robert Williams out there trying to get his conditioning up. I think that's why he played a bunch more in that third preseason game. But one thing that gets hurt, and this is a question from Connor as I dip into the mailbag, Connor N, who asked, why is there no talk of Tatum at the three? I feel like with his height and new muscle, he would dominate him as a matchup nightmare. Could be huge for the double big lineup. We're not going to see Tatum at the three. We're not going to see that in Miami. We wanted to see it in Miami. We're probably not going to see a whole lot of it. And I don't know what Tatum's going to be against Miami. We should be talking about Tatum at the three because that's what Ime Udoka wanted. He wanted that going into this game. The lineup is supposed to be Smart, Jalen, Jason, Horford, Rob. And Tatum at the three is supposed to be like, that's exactly the matchup nightmare that Udoka is trying to create with Al Horford at the four. Because you have to account for Rob at the five. You have to account for Al Horford in where do you put the height? Where do you put the length? Does it go on Tatum and you just wait for Al Horford to punish the mismatch? Or do you deal with Al Horford and try to avoid Horford going off, and then Tatum gets to go up against a smaller guy? And then Tatum goes into the post, and then he starts whipping passes around. These are all the things that are supposed to be happening right now. The Miami game was supposed to be kind of like the culmination of a lot of this stuff. It's just not going to happen that way. So the Celtics are, I guess, maybe 2-3 steps behind now, which hurts. That hurts. This is going to be a tough start to the season. And not having those two guys, Jalen and Al, because of COVID is going to be a problem. Throw Marcus Smart into the mix. It's just an unnecessary added issue that I could have been avoided. I don't like the fact that it happened, but we'll see what happens against Miami. I'll talk about that on Monday. I'm not going to do a Saturday podcast unless something monumental happens, but I don't see any reason to do a Saturday podcast on that. I'll just fill in the points on Monday. Up next, more of your questions, including a Josh Richardson question about what I think I see so far. And I think Richardson's an interesting case because of stuff I've mentioned yesterday and how he's looked, but what he can be. Some debate about that. First, I got to tell you about Theragun. Now, it doesn't matter if you're an elite athlete, someone who goes to the gym a bunch, somebody like me that sits at a desk all the time and you just get sore from sitting. Theragun can help. It's a handheld percussive therapy device. It releases your deepest muscle tension using a scientifically calibrated combination of depth, speed, and power, and it's as quiet as an electric toothbrush. The Gen 4 Theragun doesn't just feel good. It gets to the source of the pain by releasing tension using its signature percussive therapy that goes 60% deeper than vibration alone. Whether you want to treat muscle tension from working out, an injury, or just the stresses of everyday life, there is no substitute for the Theragun Gen 4. It is trusted by 250 professional athletes or sports teams like Real Madrid. Athletes like Paul George, you might see Paul George on the sideline with that thing banging into his leg. DeAndre Hopkins, Maria Sharapova, hundreds of thousands of customers. Try Theragun for 30 days, starting at only $199. That's Theragun for 30 days at $199. Therabody.com/lockedon to get that right now. Get your Gen 4 Theragun today at Therabody.com/lockedon. Therabody.com/lockedon. If you go to Built Bar, you're going to get the best tasting protein bar in the market. Maybe after your workout, you can use that Theragun while you're eating a Built Bar to refuel yourself. Great flavors, no matter what types of flavors you like. They have them, and they're going to be great for you. 17 to 18 grams of protein each. Calories ranging from 130 to 180. Only 4 or 5 grams of sugar. 4 or 5 net carbs. They're great, delicious, tasty, healthy. If you want to get one flavor, go ahead. If you want to get a mixed box, try them, go ahead. You can use the promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off every single time you use it. So go back as often as you want to built.com. Check them out for yourself. They have flash sales and new flavors all the time. So go to built.com, use that promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order every time at built.com. Once again, thanks for making the Locked On Celtics podcast your first listen every day. How about making your second listen the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast? I keep telling you about different fantasy games that partner with us. Go to Josh Lloyd in the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast after you're done with this podcast to get a leg up. Josh can help you win your league. I mean, Josh is a juggernaut. So many people listen to that podcast. He's going to help a lot of people. There's a reason why. He's so hugely popular and maybe one of the most respected fantasy basketball guys in the world. So check out Locked On Fantasy Basketball with Josh Lloyd. I asked people to send in questions on the mailbag. Whenever you want, I can answer them from time to time. So go to johnkaralis.com/mailbag. Submit your question that way. This way you don't have to deal with social media, this or that. It's just there. So a few questions here to wrap up the show, starting with Ryan M., who said, I got big into watching the NBA and following the Celtics just over a year ago and has been following the podcast since then. Thank you very much there, Ryan. So he asks, I'm wondering if Enes Kanter is legitimately terrible. I'm watching preseason games. I'm not seeing what he adds to the team. Having only followed the NBA for a small time, I hear people joke about how Kanter sucks, so why have him back in Boston? So Enes Kanter has particular skills. This is like, what's that movie, Taken, where Liam Neeson's like, I have a very particular set of skills. But that's Enes Kanter in a way. He's an offensive rebounding, like one of the best offensive rebounders, I mean, in a long time. Like, he's really, really good at that, right? He's really good at that. He's not good at certain things. He can be decent defensively in certain coverages, a drop coverage where there's certain help. Like, he can do that fairly effectively, not in huge doses, but he can be okay at it. He's bad when he switches onto guards. He cannot switch. You cannot switch defensively with Enes Kanter. And why he looks especially bad in the preseason is that's all Ime Udoka has been trying to do. He's been trying to work switching defenses into these games. Like, everything has been hammering that home over and over and over. Switch, 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 switch. Everybody switches. No adjustments, no nothing. Just everybody switch. Let's just do it. And that's the absolute weakest part of Enes Kanter's game. He cannot switch onto a guard. Anytime he does that, that guard, like every guard in the NBA has been told, and as soon as you see Enes Kanter switch onto you, just drive on him, just take him. And that's death if Ime Udoka is intent on making that a thing. And that's it. Enes Kanter's a good guy. He's a good guy. He really does work hard. He puts a lot of care into what he does. He takes care of his body. He's very mindful of everything that he does when it comes to preparing for basketball. Like, he is a true professional, and I don't want to make it like, I don't want to be insulting towards Enes Kanter, the person, or even the professional basketball player. Like, that's, I do want to make that very clear. But Enes Kanter, on the court, if he gets out of his comfort zone and gets away from doing the certain things that he does well, then he's not as versatile as what the Celtics want. So he's going to be out there, I think, a little more situationally. I don't think he's going to be, or he's going to be kind of insurance in case Al Horford goes down or Robert Williams goes down. I think that's basically his role. He's going to have a lot of DNPs, but I tell you, he's going to be supportive of his teammates. I know he wants to play, and he's going to have plenty of opportunities from, depending on the situation, but it's not going to be quite as much, I don't think. So that's why Enes Kanter has been especially bad this preseason, because he's being asked to do the one thing that he absolutely should not be asked to do. Caden C says, where do you see Josh Richardson fitting in during his first year in Boston? The Richardson question is really interesting because the first couple of games here, he's just not looked great. But, we were very tempted to say, hey, Aaron Nesmith looked good. Peyton Pritchard looked good. Romeo Langford kind of showed a couple of things. Grant Williams showed, a couple of things. Do we really need Josh Richardson? And, I tweet out things about Josh Richardson, and Mavericks people start to say, ha, see? And Philly people go, ha, told you. And so Josh needs time. He came in, he's new. New coach for the team. So he doesn't even have okay, I just got to Boston. Let me talk to Tatum and Brown and Smart and the guys who have been here and say, hey, what's the deal with this coach? What do I need to do? What do I need to know? Everybody is figuring out Ime Udoka at the same time. Meanwhile, at least some of these guys have the chemistry of having played together for a while. Richardson doesn't have that. Richardson has to figure out his expectations from Udoka and buy into this defense and figure out what he's trying to do defensively. On top of that, trying to get his offense going on a team where they're all trying way, way, way too hard, or at least started out trying way, way, way too hard to run that offense and move the ball. So you throw that first game kind of out as far as how janky the offense looked, because it looked bad for everybody. The second game looked better, but they're still nowhere near where they want to be. The third game was a throwaway, so that's out. So what opportunity has Josh Richardson had? So I don't know exactly what we're going to see from Richardson. You can tell right away the defense is going to be there. He'll be a good individual defender, and I assume a good part of the team defense. At the same time, offensively has been the question mark, and offensively, I talked about it in the podcast a couple of days ago with Joe Sway. Don't like what I've seen. Don't like how that jumper has looked. I don't like his shooting form. I don't like some of those. I just don't like some elements of his offensive game. Can that be mitigated by his role? How often is he going to be in there with everybody? Is he coming off the bench? Does he end up starting? And I got some pushback yesterday for saying, talking about Juancho Hernan Gomez. I pulled a Charles Barkley there for a second. At least I corrected myself. Juancho Hernan Gomez, and why I talked about him as even potentially a starter, because guys who struggle on their own, sometimes you take a guy who's not quite as good and you put him around the best players. And it's because those best players make him better. And so that was my argument yesterday with Juancho, and that would be my argument with Richardson, that yes, you want the guy in that starting role to enhance those other guys, but also those other guys to enhance this person. And if his best role is playing alongside those guys, then that's how you use him. Now, I don't know if he should be a starter, a bench guy, a DNP. We'll have to let the regular season play out. I think ultimately he's going to be a guy who plays 25, 30 minutes a game, plays some really good defense, and then hopefully his offense gives you something. He has been a contributor and has been able to score, despite the things that we've seen, about 13, 14, 15 points a game in other stops. So I can't say that I don't expect him to get somewhere around there, but what's he going to be in his first year? How does he fit in his first year? man, that's so tough. We just haven't seen enough to know exactly what he could be. The range is still all over the place. Going to wrap it up with Carlos L. Hey, John, season starts next week. Are we going to get blessed with another Rain and Jays reunion for the annual season win-loss predictions? Something we do every year. Jay King, Jan Packard, who were once upon a time my co-hosts here, who left and went to The Athletic. Well, Jay was already with The Athletic. They just launched the podcast. So he stuck with that and took Jam with him, which is why I've been doing it solo ever since then. But we get together every once in a while, and one of the times we get together is before the season to do our so highly anticipated Predict Every Game podcast, where we split one half of the season on Locked On Celtics, the other half of the season on Anything is Potable. It's a fun podcast, may include some adult beverages and some wild predictions, but I can tell you, Carlos, that we are in talks. We're in talks to do this. We're trying to schedule this so we can get it done before the regular season starts. Hopefully, at least we can start and do like the first half up to the All-Star break or something, and then maybe we revisit it down the road. I don't know. We're going to figure it out. It's tough getting everybody together right now. That's going to do it for this show. I appreciate you listening, watching, everything. Hopefully the Friday night game here against Miami goes well, and we don't have any other further kind of calamities for the Boston Celtics. So whatever happens, I will talk about it on the Monday podcast. It's a free Monday through Friday podcast hosted by me, occasionally with guests. So if you're new, please do subscribe either on a podcast. It's a free and available everywhere. YouTube, if you'd like, make sure you're subscribed, get notified when I drop new videos, and most importantly, share the podcast. Tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network.